In my most recent video, I discussed who I think will win in the first round in the Eastern Conference and why. And today in this video, I will be doing the same exact thing, but in the West. Since the Portland Trail Blazers have just won their play-in game, I can now discuss it. Don't forget to like to show support, subscribe to keep up with my uploads, and comment to start a conversation with me, and play that intro. The first series we will talk about is the 1v8 seed, which will feature the Los Angeles Lakers and the Portland Trail Blazers. Going into the series, Portland is viewed as a team that's on fire, and the Lakers are viewed as a team that is the opposite. But not to take any away from the Portland Trail Blazers, because their path to the playoffs is truly inspirational. But the fact that there is people who believe the Blazers can defeat the Lakers 4 times in 2 weeks is simply crazy to me. No one on the Blazers can guard the Lakers' 2 best players in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Portland's best defender on Anthony Davis is Jusuf Nurkic, who might be strong enough to guard AD in the post, but he is nowhere near agile or quick enough to guard AD, who has the quickness of some guards. And Portland's best defender on LeBron is Gary Trent Jr., who is way too small to handle LeBron and way too weak. On the other end of the floor, I can't see any of the Lakers' perimeter defenders such as Danny Green, Alex Caruso, or Kyle Kuzma guarding Portland's backcourt, and I expect the Blazers' backcourt and Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum to feast. But then again, them playing well is not written in stone, because just last year's postseason, Damian Lillard was very bad in the 2 series after the OKC one. So although the narrative is that Dame is super clutch, he has underperformed in the playoffs many times. Also, CJ is playing with an injured back that could get worse as the series goes on. Although the Blazers are playing great basketball, I would still expect the Lakers to win in 5 games. And the only reason I give Portland 1 game is because I think Damian Lillard can get the Blazers at least 1 game. But I think the dominance of LeBron and AD will be too much for the Blazers to handle. Next series we will talk about is the 2v7 matchup, which features the LA Clippers versus the Dallas Mavericks. This series can truly be closer than you would expect, because although Dallas is the 7th seed, their talent level is one of a 4 seed. Because if you remember earlier in the season, Dallas was competing for the 3rd seed, but Luka Doncic got injured and they fell back down to earth. So this won't be a regular 2v7 matchup. Dallas statistically has one of the best offenses in history, so they can keep up with the Clippers on offense. But my fear for Dallas is that Luka will not be his usual self in the series due to this being his first playoffs, and we haven't seen his game and haven't seen if it can translate to the playoffs. Also, Luka will be hounded by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who are one of the 2 best perimeter defenders in the whole NBA. The Clippers do not have a great matchup for Kristaps Porzingis, but for Dallas to win, they need Luka to be amazing, so it won't matter much. The Mavericks also lack perimeter defenders who can legitimately contain or slow down Kawhi and PG. The best defenders they can put on them is Dorian Finney-Smith, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and Tim Hardaway Jr. Dorian and Michael are good defenders, but Michael is such a terrible player on offense that he probably won't play much. And since this series is happening, I would expect the Clippers to win in 6 games. I believe Dallas will lose because them and the Clippers are elite offensive teams, but the difference between the Clippers and the Mavericks is that the Clippers are also good on defense. I would give Dallas 2 games because I believe Luka and Porzingis can go off for 2 games and lead Dallas to a win. But I give Dallas a very small chance to win the whole series, but I will be cheering them for them to win. The next series we will talk about is the 3v6 matchup, which features the Denver Nuggets versus the Utah Jazz. I'm going to go on a limb and say this series will be the best series in the first round for both conferences. I believe these teams are as evenly matched that they can be. Utah has the reputation of a great defensive team, but this season they have been only slightly above average on defense, and their offense was average before the restart, but going into this series, they will be being without their second leading scorer and Bogdan Bogdanovic. Denver, on the other hand, has the reputation of a team that's good on offense and bad on defense, but that has also been the opposite, with Denver being better on defense than they are on offense. Earlier in the bubble, the Denver Nuggets faced Utah in a game that was probably the best game in the whole bubble. It was back and forth and very intense. I hope we get more games like this in this series. I think Denver's center Nikola Jokic will not score as much since he will be defended by the best center in the NBA in Rudy Gobert. At worst, Rudy can contain Nikola. Denver's other scorers such as Jamal Murray, Will Barton, and Michael Porter Jr. should be their normal selves, with Utah's perimeter defenders only being okay, and Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, and Royce O'Neal being good defenders but not lockdown ones. I think Utah's best player in Donovan Mitchell can potentially struggle in certain games, with Denver having a plethora of defenders to throw at him, from Jeremy Grant, Torrey Craig, and Gary Harris being good defenders. Denver's good defenders are very long, and Mitchell often struggles against defenders like that. Jordan Clarkson being good off the bench will be key for Utah if they want to have a chance to win. In this series, I would choose Denver to win in 7 games, but mainly because Denver's offense might be too much for Utah. I can also see Donovan struggling in certain games, and if he plays bad, Utah has no chance. But don't get it twisted. If Bogdan Bogdanovic was playing, I would choose Utah to win in 6 games. The next series we will talk about is the 4v5 seed matchup, which will feature the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Houston Rockets. This series would be way more emotional and interesting if there wasn't a chance that Russ would miss the whole series. Russ's injury makes it way more difficult to predict who will win, but if Russ plays or not, this series will be close no matter what. Although OKC is not a great offensive team, they are good on defense, but I truly believe OKC's offense is better than how they are ranked, because they have many shot creators in Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dennis Schroeder, and Danilo Gallinari. In the playoffs, having multiple players who can go out and score 25 plus points is more valuable than a team with a bunch of 12 points per game scorers. So against OKC, Houston will need great perimeter defense. But then on the other end, OKC doesn't have a single defender to guard Russell Westbrook or James Harden. And if Russ doesn't play, OKC can try to trap Harden and let others beat them, but Houston has so much good shooters that a game plan like that could fail drastically. OKC also isn't a huge team, so Houston shouldn't get killed as much on the boards as you would think. But if Steven Adams dominates, it can get bad for Houston. My fear for the Rockets would be that Russ not playing lets OKC focus on Harden and he doesn't deliver like he did in past playoffs. If Russ doesn't play, I wonder who Houston's second go-to scorer would be. You would have to hope everyone makes their easy shots. In this series, I would choose Houston to win in 7 games if Russ only misses 2 games. But if Russ misses more than 2 games, I would choose OKC in 7 games. I think Houston's star power overpowers OKC, but I also think OKC's plethora of shot creators might be too much for Houston to contain. But this whole series is on Russ's shoulders. Hopefully this series is close and entertaining, because all signs point to that. Anyways guys, that's it for the video. Please like the video to show support, subscribe to keep up with my uploads, and comment to start a conversation with me. And check these 2 videos up above if you like this one. And I'm out.